The hall was so bright, it almost looked like daytime. Crystal chandeliers hung from the ceiling like frozen stars. Cameras flashed from every angle. The red carpet stretched from the entrance all the way to the stage, where a golden podium stood under a giant screen that read, Benson Group of Companies, Gala Night. Janet Nelson stood near the front row in a tight, expensive Ankara gown. Her hair was packed in a neat bun, and she held a brown handbag like it was a trophy. She wore a smile that looked sweet, but her eyes were sharp, like she was always judging people. She wasn't there because she was happy. She was there because she wanted to prove something. Janet had told everyone she was the most important person in her company. She wanted people to fear her name. She wanted to walk into any room and make people feel small. Tonight, she wanted that feeling more than ever, because tonight she had invited someone as a joke. A poor janitor, Ben. When Janet thought about it, her lips curled. Let him come and see how the rich live, she told herself earlier. Let him step on this carpet and feel ashamed of his cheap clothes. Let him know his place. She had even sent the invitation in a way that sounded kind, but it was not kindness. It was cruelty wearing perfume. Ben had worked for her just a few weeks ago. He cleaned her office, swept her floors, washed her tiles until they shined. He never argued, never shouted, never begged loudly. But Janet didn't like quiet people. Quiet people made her uneasy, because quiet people sometimes held secrets. Now, the MC's voice boomed across the hall. Ladies and gentlemen, we are about to welcome our special guest of honor, the man behind the biggest company in the country. A wave of excitement rolled through the crowd. People straightened their clothes. Some stood up early, like they didn't want to be caught sitting down when the person walked in. Janet lifted her chin. Yes, she thought. Let them all see me near the front. The MC continued. The billionaire CEO of Benson Group of Companies. Please rise to welcome. The hall went silent. Even the music in the background dropped low, like it was holding its breath. Then the entrance doors opened. A tall figure stepped in. For 1 second, Janet didn't understand what she was seeing. The man was dark-skinned, Nigerian, confident and calm. He wore an expensive navy blue kaftan that fit him perfectly. A red cap sat on his head like a crown. His beard was trimmed neatly, and his smile was small but powerful. He didn't rush. He didn't look around like he was lost. He walked like the hall belonged to him. And then the most unbelievable thing happened. People began to bow. Not one person, not two, almost everyone. Men in suits bowed. Women in sparkling gowns bowed. Even important-looking elders nodded their heads with respect. The sound of bows was soft, like a wave of fabric and jewelry moving together. Janet's mouth opened. Her fingers tightened around her handbag. Why are they bowing? She thought. The man kept walking down the red carpet, his shoes quiet on the soft floor. The cameras flashed harder now. Reporters whispered his name like it was a prayer, and then Janet heard it. Someone near her said, That's him, that's Benson. Another person said, The CEO himself, the real owner. Janet's heart stopped for a moment. She stared harder. The face, that face was familiar. No, it couldn't be. Her throat became dry. Her chest felt tight. As the man came closer to the front row, the MC shouted clearly, Please welcome, Chief Ben Benson. The hall exploded. Clapping. Cheers. Standing ovation. Janet did not clap. She could not move. Her eyes stayed wide, shocked and confused, like her brain was refusing to accept the truth. Because she knew that face. She knew it very well. That was the same man who had stood in her kitchen weeks ago, holding a mop. That was the same man she had shouted at in her living room. That was the same poor janitor she had humiliated. Janet's knees almost gave way. The music rose again, loud and proud, as Ben reached the front row. A security team followed behind him, but Ben didn't look like someone who needed protection. He looked like someone the whole world wanted to impress. Ben stopped for a moment and greeted a few people with a simple nod. Then his eyes moved. They landed on Janet. Just for a second. Just 1 second. But that 1 second felt like someone poured cold water on Janet's head. Ben's smile did not disappear. He didn't frown. He didn't shout. He simply looked at her. Like he remembered everything. Janet's stomach turned. He knows me, her mind screamed. She tried to smile, but her lips shook. She tried to breathe, but her breath was trapped. Ben turned away, walked up the steps, and mounted the stage. The hall settled again. Everyone waited for his first words. Ben stood behind the golden podium and adjusted the microphone calmly. The bright light above him made his kaftan glow. He looked like a king, but he stood like a humble man. Then he began to speak. "Good evening, everyone." The crowd clapped again. Ben raised one hand gently, and the clapping slowed. He smiled. "Thank you. Please sit." People sat quickly, obedient like schoolchildren. Janet sat too, but she felt like her chair was made of fire. Ben continued, "Tonight, we celebrate achievements. We celebrate growth. We celebrate people who work hard." Janet swallowed. Ben's voice was smooth, clear, and confident. He went on, "Many of you know Benson Group as the biggest company in this country. You see the towers, the cars, the big offices. But what you don't always see are the small people behind the success." Some people nodded. Janet's fingers gripped the side of her seat. Ben paused, then said, "I want to dedicate these achievements to everyone who stood by me, everyone who believed in me, everyone who respected people, whether they were rich or poor." The crowd clapped again. Janet did not clap. Ben's eyes moved across the hall like he was searching for something. Then he said, slowly, carefully, "There is something else I want to share tonight. Something personal." The room quieted. Even the waiters stopped moving. Ben leaned closer to the microphone. "I have never lived a loud lifestyle," he said. "Not because I cannot, but because I wanted to be free." People leaned forward. Ben continued, "Free to move around, free to learn, free to see how people treat others when they think nobody important is watching." A few people exchanged looks. Janet's face turned cold. Ben added, "Some people are kind only when cameras are near. Some people smile only at people who wear suits. But the way you treat a person in uniform, the way you treat a worker, that shows the real you." Janet felt like the hall was shrinking around her. Ben's voice remained calm, but each word hit like a slap. He said, "A few weeks ago, I disguised myself." The crowd gasped softly. Ben's eyes narrowed a little, not in anger, but in seriousness. "I worked as a janitor," he said. A louder gasp this time. Janet's blood drained from her face. Ben continued, "I wanted to understand something. I wanted to test something. I wanted to see how some people treat the poor." Now the hall was completely silent. No clapping, no whispering. Just shock. Ben held the microphone and said the words Janet feared most. "And the woman I worked for was here tonight." Janet's heart jumped into her throat. Ben turned his head slightly and looked straight toward her side of the hall. Janet froze like stone. Then Ben said, in a voice that sounded gentle but dangerous, "She invited the poor janitor to this gala. As a joke." Janet's breath broke. People began to look around. Some faces turned toward Janet. Some people whispered. Janet wanted to stand up and run. But her body refused to move. Ben lifted his hand, and the room stayed quiet. He continued, "That woman humiliated me, denied me my pay, kicked me out of her house like I was trash." A wave of murmurs rolled through the crowd like thunder. Janet's eyes filled with tears, not because she was sorry, but because she was terrified. Ben's voice remained steady, and while she was busy thinking she was untouchable, Ben said, "I was quietly purchasing the company that made her arrogant." The hall erupted. "What? Did he just say? Purchasing her company? Who is he talking about?" Janet's hands began to shake. Ben looked down at the crowd, then said the final sentence like a hammer. "I bought her company, and I employed her back as the general manager." Janet's body went cold. The room spun. People's heads snapped toward her. Some mouths dropped open. Some people stood up just to see her face clearly. Janet could hear the whispers now. "Is it her? Janet Nelson? That arrogant woman? Was she the one? Oh my God." Janet tried to stand, but her legs failed her. She sat down hard, eyes wide, trembling. Ben stood tall on the stage, calm and powerful, while the hall buzzed with shock. Then he added, quietly, "And tonight, I want her to know something." Janet looked up at him like a trapped animal. Ben's eyes were on her. He said, "This is not revenge." He paused. Then he said, "This is a lesson." Janet's lips parted, but no sound came out. The MC didn't know what to do. The crowd didn't know whether to clap or stay silent. And Janet felt like the ground was about to open and swallow her, because at that moment she realized something worse than shame. Ben hadn't even started yet, and he had everyone watching her. Then Ben lifted a small brown envelope from the podium, looked straight at Janet, and said, "Inside this envelope is the first instruction that will decide your future in my company. I do 5. If you want 30s now." Janet's whole body shook. The hall went deadly quiet again, and Ben opened the envelope. The hall stayed silent, so silent that Janet could hear her own heartbeat pounding in her ears. Ben stood on the stage, holding the small brown envelope between his fingers. He did not rush. He did not enjoy the fear in the room. He simply allowed the moment to breathe, letting everyone feel the weight of what was happening. Janet felt like she was shrinking in her seat. "Please, don't say my name," she begged silently. "Please." Ben opened the envelope slowly and pulled out a single sheet of paper. He glanced at it, then looked back at the audience. "This instruction," he said calmly, "is simple." People leaned forward. Cameras zoomed in. Janet's nails dug into her palm. Ben read aloud, "Effective immediately, the general manager of Nelson Holdings will resume work under Benson Group of Companies. She will report directly to me." A low murmur spread through the hall. Ben added, "No special treatment, no shortcuts. Performance and character will decide everything." He folded the paper and placed it back inside the envelope. "That is all," he said. For a moment, no one clapped. Then, slowly, applause began. It grew louder and louder until the hall was filled with sound again. But Janet did not clap. She sat stiffly, her face pale, her mind racing. "He didn't sack me. Why didn't he sack me? Is this worse than being sacked?" Ben stepped down from the stage. People rushed toward him, eager to greet him, shake his hand, take pictures. Security formed a gentle wall around him. As Ben walked past Janet's row, she felt him near her again. This time, he stopped. Janet could smell his cologne, clean, calm, expensive. She slowly looked up. Ben leaned slightly toward her and spoke in a low voice that only she could hear. "Good evening, Janet." Her throat tightened. Good evening, sir," she whispered. Ben nodded once. Nothing more. Then he walked away. That single nod was heavier than any insult. Janet sat there long after the event ended, long after the hall emptied, long after the music stopped. She did not remember how she got to her car. She did not remember the drive home. All she remembered was Ben's face, calm, controlled, unreadable. That night, Janet could not sleep. She lay on her bed, staring at the ceiling, replaying everything again and again. The mop in Ben's hand, the way she shouted at him, the day she denied him his salary, the way she told security to push him out. How did I not see it, she wondered. How did I not know? Her phone buzzed on the bedside table. She picked it up quickly, hoping it was not bad news. But it was only a reminder for a meeting she now realized meant nothing. Janet dropped the phone and covered her face with her hands. For the first time in years, fear wrapped around her like a blanket. Not fear of poverty, not fear of losing status, fear of facing herself. Slowly, she reached for her phone again. Her fingers trembled as she typed. "Good evening, sir. Please forgive me. I know I was wicked. Please don't humiliate me. Don't let my bad behavior change you. I promise to be a changed person." She read the message 3 times. Then she sent it. The message showed delivered. Janet held her breath. Minutes passed. No reply. An hour passed. Still nothing. Tears slipped from her eyes onto the pillow. Ben read the message that same night. He sat in his quiet study, the city lights glowing softly through the window. He read Janet's words once. Then he locked his phone. He did not reply. The next morning came too quickly. Janet dressed for work, like someone going to court. No loud colors. No flashy jewelry. No proud walk. As she entered the Benson Group headquarters, something felt different. People watched her, not with fear, not with admiration, with curiosity. Is that her? The woman from last night? The one who humiliated the CEO? Janet kept her eyes on the floor. At the front desk, the receptionist smiled politely. "Good morning, ma'am," she said. Janet nodded. She had never noticed how polite the receptionist always was. She had never noticed because she had never cared. "Sir Ben would like to see you," the receptionist added. Janet's heart skipped. So soon? She asked quietly. Yes, ma'am. His office. Janet swallowed hard and walked toward the elevator. Each step felt heavier than the last. When the elevator doors opened on the top floor, Janet stepped into a world she once thought she controlled. Ben's office was wide and bright. Large windows showed the city below. Everything looked calm and powerful, just like him. The secretary stood and knocked gently. Sir, she's here. Let her in, Ben said. Janet entered. The moment the door closed behind her, something inside her broke. She walked 2 steps forward and dropped to her knees. I'm sorry, she cried. I'm so sorry. Her tears fell freely now. I didn't know, she sobbed. I thought you were just a poor janitor. I allowed money to blind me. Please forgive me. Ben stood up slowly from his chair. Janet bowed her head, waiting for anger, waiting for punishment. But none came. Ben spoke gently. Stand up, Janet. She hesitated. Stand up, he repeated. She stood, wiping her tears. Ben looked at her carefully, not with hatred, not with pride, with clarity. I will not sack you, he said. Janet gasped softly. But, Ben continued, things will change. She nodded quickly. Yes, sir. Anything. You will continue as general manager, Ben said, but you will report directly to me. You will follow instructions. You will treat every staff member with respect, cleaner or director. Yes, sir, Janet whispered. Ben added, You once gave instructions while I obeyed. He paused. Now the roles are reversed. Janet felt shame wash over her, but also relief. She bowed her head again. Thank you for giving me a chance. Ben nodded. Don't thank me yet. Prove it. Weeks passed. Janet changed. Not because she was afraid, but because she was awake. She greeted cleaners by name. She listened. She apologized. She worked harder than she ever had. Ben watched quietly. Staff members whispered in shock. That woman has changed. She even helped me carry files. She apologized to me today. Janet did not defend herself. She simply worked. Slowly, trust began to grow. But deep inside Janet, a question still burned. Is this forgiveness, or is something else coming? One evening, as she was about to leave the office, her phone rang. It was Ben's secretary. Sir Ben wants to see you tomorrow morning. First thing, Janet's heart tightened again. She looked at the dark sky outside the window. The past had caught up with her once. Was it about to do so again? She whispered to herself, whatever it is, I will face it. That night, sleep refused to come, because Janet knew one thing for sure. When Ben called you in, it was never for something small. Janet arrived at the office earlier than usual the next morning, much earlier. The sky was still soft grey, and the city had not fully woken up. The parking lot was almost empty. As she stepped out of her car, she took a deep breath, like someone preparing for an exam that could change her life. Whatever it is, she told herself, I will face it with humility. She walked into the building quietly. The cleaners were already at work, pushing their carts, wiping glass doors, mopping floors. Janet paused. A few weeks ago, she would have walked past them without a glance. Now, she stopped. Good morning, she said gently. The cleaners froze for a second, surprised. Good morning, ma'am, one replied quickly. Janet smiled and nodded before walking away. Her heart felt heavy. She knew she could never erase what she had done. All she could do was change what she would do next. When Janet reached her office, she did not sit. She stood by the window, watching the city below, waiting. Her phone buzzed. Please come to the CEO's office now. Her stomach tightened. Janet straightened her clothes and walked out. Every step toward Ben's office felt longer than the last. She knocked. Come in, Ben's voice said calmly. Janet entered. Ben was standing, looking through the window, his hands behind his back. The morning light touched his face, making him look calm and unreadable. You asked to see me, sir, Janet said softly. Ben turned and nodded. Sit. She sat. For a few seconds, Ben said nothing. He walked back to his desk and picked up a file. Janet's heart beat faster. Ben opened the file and spoke without looking at her. Do you know how many complaints we receive every year from junior staff? He asked. Janet swallowed. No, sir. Hundreds, Ben said. Most of them never reach the top. They are buried under fear. Janet lowered her eyes. Ben finally looked at her. Fear created by people in power. Janet's throat tightened. She knew he was talking about her. "I won't lie to you," Ben continued. "Some people expected me to sack you immediately." Janet nodded. "I understand." "But I didn't," Ben said. "Do you know why?" Janet shook her head slowly. "Because punishment can stop bad behavior," Ben said. "But only change can fix a person." Janet's eyes filled with tears again. Ben leaned forward slightly. "But change must be tested." Her heart jumped. "I'm assigning you to a special task," Ben said. Janet sat up straight. "Yes, sir. You will oversee staff welfare across all departments," Ben said, "from directors to cleaners." Janet blinked. "Me?" "Yes," Ben replied. "You will listen to complaints. You will solve problems. You will report directly to me every detail." Janet nodded quickly. "I will do my best." Ben looked at her carefully. "This task is not about reports. It is about your heart." Janet placed a hand on her chest. "I understand." Ben closed the file. "You may go." Janet stood, bowed slightly, and left. As she walked out, her legs felt weak not from fear, but from the weight of responsibility. The days that followed were not easy. Janet listened to stories she had never wanted to hear before. A cleaner who had not been paid overtime, a security guard who worked night shifts without rest, a young assistant who cried quietly because her supervisor shouted at her daily. Each story felt like a mirror. Janet saw herself in too many of them. At night, she would sit alone in her living room, replaying the words of those workers. Was this how they felt when I shouted at Ben? One afternoon, Janet walked through the building and stopped near the janitor's room. She hesitated. Then she entered. The room fell silent. Some of the workers recognized her and stiffened. Janet took a deep breath. "I came to apologize," she said. Eyes widened. "I have not always been kind," Janet continued. "I treated people wrongly. I am sorry." No one spoke. Then an older man nodded slowly. "Thank you, ma'am." That simple sentence broke something inside her. Janet walked out with tears in her eyes. Ben watched everything, quietly. He read reports. He observed behavior. He listened to feedback. People noticed. "The CEO is watching closely," staff whispered. Janet felt those watching eyes too. But instead of fear, she felt purpose. Weeks turned into months. Janet worked harder than she ever had in her life. Not for praise, not for power, but because she wanted to become someone different. Then one evening, Ben called another management meeting. The room was full. Janet sat among them, calm but alert. Ben stood and spoke. "I want to talk about growth," he said. "Real growth." People nodded. "Companies grow when people grow," Ben continued. "And people grow when they are given a chance." Janet felt a strange tightness in her chest. Ben looked around the room, then said, "Some people here have surprised me." Janet's breath caught. Ben added, "They have shown humility, hard work, change." Janet looked down, unsure. After the meeting, people whispered again, "Is he talking about Janet? She has really changed. I never thought I'd see this." Janet walked back to her office quietly. But as she reached her desk, she saw something waiting for her. A brown envelope. Her heart skipped. It was the same kind of envelope Ben had held on the gala night. Her hands trembled as she picked it up. On it was written, "For Janet Nelson." Her mouth went dry. "What now?" she thought. She opened the envelope slowly. Inside was an invitation card. Benson Group Annual Gala Night End of Year Awards. Janet frowned. She turned the card over. There was a handwritten note at the bottom. "You are expected to attend." No signature. No explanation. Janet stared at the card for a long time. Her heart pounded. Was this another test? Another lesson? Or something worse? She leaned back in her chair and whispered to herself, "I will go, no matter what." But deep inside, fear and hope mixed together. Because Janet knew one thing. That gala night had changed her life once before, and whatever was coming next would change it again. The day of the gala arrived quietly, too quietly. Janet woke up before her alarm rang. Her room was dark, but her mind was already loud. The invitation card lay on her bedside table, staring at her like it had eyes. Benson Group Annual Gala Night End of Year Awards. Her stomach twisted. This was not just another company event. This was the same kind of night where her life had fallen apart months ago. The same lights, the same red carpet, the same kind of crowd. Only this time, she would be walking in as a different person. Or at least, she hoped she was. Janet sat on the edge of her bed and whispered, "I can't run." She stood up and got ready slowly. She chose a simple, elegant gown, not loud, not proud. No heavy jewelry, no flashy makeup. When she looked at herself in the mirror, she did not see the woman she used to be. She saw someone trying. The gala hall was even more beautiful than before. The chandeliers sparkled brighter. The red carpet looked longer. Cameras flashed as guests arrived one after another. Laughter filled the air. But Janet walked in quietly. Some people noticed her immediately. Heads turned. Whispers followed. "That's her. She's really changed. I never thought she would still be here." Janet kept her head up, but her eyes soft. She greeted people politely and moved to her seat. Her hands rested calmly on her lap, but her heart beat fast. Then the music changed. The MC stepped onto the stage. "Ladies and gentlemen," he said, smiling, "welcome once again to the Benson Group annual gala night." Applause filled the hall. Janet clapped lightly. The MC continued, "Tonight, we celebrate excellence, dedication, growth." Janet swallowed. "And now," the MC added, "please rise to welcome our CEO." The hall stood up. Janet stood too. Ben entered, just like the first time but different. He wore a crisp white traditional outfit this time, calm and powerful. The hall bowed again, but this time Janet bowed too. Not because she had to, because she wanted to. Ben walked to the stage and greeted the crowd warmly. As he began to speak, Janet listened closely. "Tonight," Ben said, "we celebrate people who worked with integrity, people who grew, people who changed." Janet felt her chest tighten. Ben paused, then added, "Growth is not about money, it is about character." The room was quiet. Ben continued, "This year, I saw something rare." Janet's fingers curled slightly. "I saw someone fall and stand up differently." A soft murmur spread across the hall. Ben's eyes moved across the crowd, slowly. Then he said, "The best staff award this year goes to..." Janet's breath stopped. "Janet Nelson." The hall froze. For one full second, no one clapped. Janet stared at the stage, unable to move. Did he say my name? Then the applause exploded. Loud, long, unending. Janet felt tears rush to her eyes. People turned to look at her. Some smiled. Some looked shocked. Some nodded in approval. Her legs shook as she stood up. She walked toward the stage slowly, every step heavy with memories. The red carpet felt different this time. Not like fire, like truth. Ben stood at the center of the stage, holding the award. As Janet approached, she could barely see through her tears. Ben handed her the award gently. The crowd clapped again. Janet held the award with both hands, her shoulders shaking. The MC handed her the microphone. Janet looked at the crowd. Then she spoke. I never thought I would stand here," she said, her voice breaking. The hall quieted. "I used to think money made me important," Janet continued. "I thought shouting made me strong. I thought humiliating people made me powerful." She paused, wiping her tears. "I was wrong." The hall listened. "I once humiliated a man I thought was poor," she said softly. "I denied him his pay. I treated him like he was nothing." Some people gasped quietly. "That man," Janet said, turning toward Ben, "stood here tonight and showed me mercy." Ben nodded gently. Janet faced the crowd again. "He gave me a chance when I didn't deserve it. And that chance changed me." Tears streamed freely now. "If there is one thing I want everyone to learn from my story," she said, "it is this: never look down on anyone." The hall was silent. Janet added, "Because the person you step on today may be the one who lifts you tomorrow." The hall erupted in applause. Janet bowed her head, overwhelmed. Ben stepped forward and took the microphone again. "Thank you, Janet," he said calmly. Janet returned to her seat, her heart full but trembling. She thought it was over. She was wrong. Ben looked at the crowd and said, "But there is one more thing." The applause faded. Ben continued, "Change is not proven by words, but by actions." Janet's heart skipped. Ben raised a hand, and the large screen behind him lit up. Janet's breath caught. Images began to play. Footage of staff welfare meetings. Videos of Janet listening to cleaners. Clips of her apologizing. Moments she didn't even know were recorded. The The hall murmured. Then the screen went black. Ben looked directly at Janet. "Janet Nelson," he said. "This journey is not finished." Janet felt the room spin. Ben added, "Tomorrow morning, I will announce something that will affect your future in this company." A hush fell over the hall. Janet's fingers tightened around the award. "What now?" she thought. Ben's voice was steady. "For now, enjoy the night." Music rose again. People clapped, but Janet could not celebrate. Her heart pounded louder than the music, because she knew Ben never spoke without purpose. And whatever he planned to announce the next morning would either complete her redemption or destroy everything she had worked for. She looked down at the award in her hands. It suddenly felt heavier than gold. Morning came with a quiet kind of fear. Janet barely slept. The award sat on her table like a question she could not answer. She dressed early, hands steady but heart loud. As she drove to the office, she kept hearing Ben's words from the night before. "Tomorrow morning, I will announce something that will affect your future." She parked, stepped out, and looked up at the tall building. For the first time, she did not see power. She saw responsibility. Inside the office, the air felt different. People greeted her warmly. "Good morning, ma'am. Congratulations again." She nodded, thanked them, and walked on. At exactly 9 a.m., an email went out to all staff. Mandatory staff meeting main hall. Janet's stomach tightened. The hall filled quickly. Directors, managers, assistants, cleaners, security, everyone. Janet took a seat near the front. Ben walked in last. He wore a simple navy suit. No show, no pride, just calm. The room stood. Ben raised a hand. "Please sit." Everyone obeyed. Ben looked around slowly, then spoke. "Last night we celebrated excellence," he said. "Today we will define it." The hall was quiet. Ben continued. "A company does not fail because of money. It fails because of character." Some people nodded. "Months ago," Ben said, "I made a decision that shocked many people. I did not sack someone who deserved punishment." Janet lowered her eyes. "I did not do that because I am weak," Ben said. "I did it because I believe in growth." He paused, then added, "But growth must lead to service." Janet's heart thumped. Ben turned slightly toward her. "Janet Nelson, please stand." Every eye turned to her. Janet stood. Her legs shook, but she stayed upright. Ben spoke clearly. "From today, Janet Nelson will take on a new role." The room held its breath. She will become the Director of Staff Welfare and Ethics across Benson Group of Companies. A wave of murmurs rolled through the hall. Ben raised a hand. "This role comes with power, but more responsibility." Janet's eyes filled with tears. Ben continued. "She will ensure fairness in pay, respect in conduct, and dignity for every worker, regardless of position." He looked at Janet. "Your past does not disqualify you. Your change qualifies you." The hall erupted in applause. Janet covered her mouth, overwhelmed. Ben added, "This appointment is not a reward, it is a duty." He faced the crowd again. "Let this be clear, no one here is above correction. Not managers, not directors, not even me." The hall quieted again. Ben concluded, "Because when leadership listens, people grow. And when people grow, companies thrive." He nodded. Meeting dismissed. The hall exploded with applause. Janet sat down slowly, tears rolling freely now, not from fear, but from relief and purpose. Weeks turned into months. Janet worked harder than ever. She visited departments, listened to complaints, fixed systems, changed policies. She created training programs on respect and ethics. When someone shouted at a cleaner, Janet addressed it. When a worker was unpaid, Janet fixed it. When a manager abused power, Janet reported it no matter who it was. Ben watched quietly. Staff noticed. "This company has changed. They treat us like humans now. That woman really changed." Janet never defended herself. She simply worked. One afternoon, Janet found Ben in his office, reviewing files. "Sir," she said softly. "Thank you." Ben looked up. "For what?" "For not destroying me when you could," Janet replied. Ben smiled gently. "You destroyed the old version yourself." "I only opened the door." At the end of the year, another gala night arrived. But this time, the mood was different. Lighter, kinder. Janet stood on stage again, not to receive an award, but to speak. She looked out at the crowd and said, "I once believed money made me better than others." She paused. "Now I know character does." The hall applauded. Ben watched from his seat, calm and proud not of the applause, but of the lesson. Later that night, Janet returned home, tired but fulfilled. She sat on her couch and looked at her phone. A message notification popped up. From Ben. "Thank you for proving that change is possible." Janet smiled through tears. She typed back, "Thank you for teaching me that power means service." She placed the phone down and leaned back. Her journey had begun with pride. It passed through shame, and it ended with purpose. Somewhere in the city, a cleaner mopped a floor without fear. A manager spoke with respect. A company thrived not just in money, but in heart. And Janet Nelson knew one truth would live with her forever. Never mock someone because they look small. You may be standing in the shadow of a giant. If you like this story, comment, share, and subscribe to our channel for more interesting stories.